Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlicker shills, debt slaves, serfs, peasants, vassals, meat sacks. Yes, it is I, a useful idiot returning to a charred planet. What a clusterfuck this last 8 months I've been gone. So I have a lot of catching up to do. So anyway, those of you waiting for favorite topics, just be patient because I'm going to be doing a lot of catch up. I've kept notes over every fucked up thing that's happened over the last 8 months, which is fairly considerable. And I'm going to dive right into it. Unlike people like We Are Change and Storm Clouds Gathering, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with my personal shit and bellyache about how all my money ran out because a giant corporate behemoth that wants to censor me pulled out my money. I think it's pretty crazy that any of these guys decided to make their living and depend on this company for their uh, living expenses. So anyway, I digress. So let's dive into this ocean of shit that's out there. First of all, I'm going to start with global arms sales, because let's remember, behind everything that's going on out there, as my friend John Barleycorn likes to say, follow the money. So let's follow the money, and the money, big time, is arms sales, global arms sales, and right now is no exception. And I'm going to bring up this article because apparently the Pentagon is having a very hard time keeping up with surging weapons demand. And there's been a slight drop in weapons sales over the last 4 years, but I'll get to that later. It's good to have this surge right now, a 36% surge of sales in 2015. So this is good news for the arms industry that we have wars all over the planet now. So, and the geopolitical implications of that, needless to say, speak for themselves. But in case they don't speak for themselves loud enough, I'm going to jibber jabber about it later in this video as well. So we're up to $46.6 billion in arms sales, and this is just for the Pentagon. And everything goes through this Defense Security Cooperation Agency. They coordinate all these contracts. They currently have 13,500 contracts for a total of $461 billion outstanding. So this $46.6 billion is really a drop in the bucket, considering all the contracts and all the money that's coming down the pike as well. And needless to say, the spokesman for the Pentagon are saying, quote, projections are still strong, unquote. So this world of shit out there, and the fact that they get to arm both sides, they get to arm all these coalition members, and then they get to arm ISIS as well. So that's really got to have created a surge in sales. And then the other thing that the Pentagon said that, of course, is notable, it's, quote, it's worldwide, Europe, the Pacific, and the Middle East, unquote. So things are great. There's chaos everywhere and fear everywhere, so everybody's going to arm themselves to the teeth. And they are arming themselves to the teeth. I have some figures later on that will prove that. So countries and corporations want these arms sales approved faster and processed sooner. And so that's another thing that's at the heart of this new surge in sales in the Pentagon and U.S. corporations and the military-industrial complex, trying to keep up with all these arms sales, because they want to open wide the gates and have these things approved faster and processed quickly. And I find that an ironic contrast, considering the discussion of gun control in the United States. So for citizens and for the population in the United States, they want to slow things down and have the process be much slower. But in global arms sales, massacring millions across the globe, they want things to be speeded up. So a little interesting irony there, and the kind of thing that people expect me to point out. Even U.S. Reserves are being sold now. So that's another interesting thing, this stockpile that the United States has accumulated. So this is actually free money. This is gravy. A lot of this is coming in. It's because U.S. reserves for the United States military are being sold in order to speed the process up. So that's pretty convenient for them to make this also easy for a state. So when a state murders millions, then you want to speed the process up. But when you have a few loose nuts here and there, you want to slow it down for millions of other people who have nothing to do with it. But needless to say, there's no surprise that there's also a surge in Russian military production, and I'll attach some articles below that go into that a little more lengthily. But now there are 11 Russian companies in the top 100 arms dealers in the world instead of 9. So things are looking up for Russia. So they might be having problems with the price of oil, but weapons sales are good. And other countries that are having surging sales as exporters are Brazil, India, South Korea, and Turkey. And I think that's fairly telling that arms sales in Turkey are surging, which would also seem to bolster ideas that they are arming certain other individuals besides the Turkish military. Although the Turkish military is very substantial and they're always going to need weapons, and but things could be surging in Turkey if they are supplying weapons on a substantial scale to ISIS, which is something I'll be doing a video on as well. Even our little peacenik friends up to the north, Canada, are really doing well. They signed a $10 billion contract with Saudi Arabia to provide light armored vehicles for the National Guard. And so $10 billion, that's a pretty sizable contract, particularly a military contract for a country like Canada. So everybody's getting in on it. So like I said earlier, overall weapons sales have declined for the last 4 years, mostly in the U.S. and the West, losing out 4% a year to other regional companies that are now competing. But that's just because there's so many people getting in on the arms market. And in fact, the top 10 countries selling weapons are the U.S. and Russia are number 1 and 2, and they're almost neck and neck. 31% of the global market share for the United States and 27% for Russia. And then the China is the third, and they're way behind Russia and USA. China's 5%. So you can see why we have this, another thing that shows why we have a standoff with Russia currently, because Russia is a major competitor in the global arms market. I'm sure most of the corporations in the United States in the military industrial complex and all the warmongers in our government want to make sure that Russia becomes less of a competitor. So it's probably about global weapon sales as well. I'm sure they're salivating thinking about being the only arms manufacturer worldwide. How nice would that be? But anyway, USA, Russia, China, then Germany, then France, then UK, then Spain, then Italy, then Ukraine, then Israel. So I always point out, here's a country the size of Rhode Island, Israel. It's the 10th largest arms supplier to the world. And it's surprising the Ukraine is still on there, but of course they're getting IMF money to help and U.S. money to help bankroll their military. So they're buying some weapons. So no surprise they're going to be number 9. But the fact that they're number 9 selling, that's pretty telling in itself. What's going on there? Although I understand that sales are finally falling there, but that still hasn't kept them from being number 9. And so, 2 major U.S. military corporations, military contract corporations, Lockheed Martin and Boeing, of course, continually surge. They never see any sag in their sales, so they have a huge market share. And overall, the U.S. still has a 50% global market of guns. But who are the top buyers? I found that rather interesting too. The top buyers are India, Saudi Arabia, China, the United Arab Emirates, Pakistan, Australia, Turkey, and the USA. So USA remains a top buyer in the top 10, in spite of being the number 1 seller as well. So it's a great relationship. Everybody, just all these governments and corporations all over the world trading each other guns. Turkey, once again, being on the list as a buyer. So no surprise there. Once again, we see probably a surge because they're buying weapons for ISIS. Australia is, of course, arming because they are a major player in the global coalition, particularly the pivot to Asia. And they got the fear mongering going on down there. So they're going to load up with guns. Pakistan, of course, has been buying guns since the day the country was born. But notable that Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates are on there. Of course, they've been loading up with guns, and a lot of that has to do with the war in Yemen and arming for other contingencies as well. And in fact, very telling, the last 10 years, Middle East arms sales have risen by 75% from 99 billion to 173 billion. And once again, I find that very telling. If we have these trends where Western companies are seeing their arms sales drop, and then they can get involved in fostering war in all over the Middle East and bolster these kind of rise in sales. And it's good for business. And I don't think anybody should kid themselves that there are a lot of players in both the media with retired generals and experts and all these retired military that run all these security and military corporations and having this symbiotic relationship with people still in the government. I can assure you that arms corporations have a lot to do with helping foster the sort of kind of foreign policies we have. So if anybody doesn't think that's true, they are naive. And another thing that's interesting too, once again talking about gun control, these figures that I got from Amnesty International, weapons and ammunition in circulation overall globally, and this is just China, the USA, Russia, India, France, and UK. And so just those 6 countries, and it adds up to 15,000 battle tanks, 18,000 combat vehicles, 36,000 large artillery, 7,500 combat aircraft, 1,500 attack helicopters, 270 warships, 527 drones, and here's the part I like, 875 million light weapons, and roughly 1 million small arms. So once again, we have elements in the United States in the government who are talking about gun control and all the guns that are floating around and how much damage it does. And yet we have these 6 countries that have managed to put 875 million light weapons in the world with just their militaries. And that's not including all the weapons that are in circulation that are just sold for all these proxy wars, once again, that are going on all over the globe. And everybody's in on it. Like I always say, if one's doing it, they're all doing it. And this is true too. We have 1,000 companies in 100 countries, 100 billion annually spent on weapons with these 1,000 companies in 100 countries. So nobody really can point the finger at anybody else because everybody's selling guns anywhere they can to anyone they can, and the government is no exception. So there's a little peek into our happy world now, where governments want to clamp down on the guns of citizens, but they're flooding the globe with more weapons than anyone could ever fucking imagine. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.